I am Jeff Petkus, Senior Director of Product Management for Operative. I'd like to first thank everyone for joining our webinar today entitled CRM Meet ABM, Best Practices for Integrating Your Customer Relationship Management and Ad Business Management Systems, featuring Michael Geffrin, Senior Director of Ad Ops with Alloy Digital. Alloy Digital Network reaches over 60 million young consumers every month through its network of premium, highly trafficked and monitored websites. At Alloy, Michael oversees the operations team, which covers ad serving as well as revenue management, new technology platforms, and inventory controls. He works closely with sales, account management, finance, editorial, marketing, and creative production to build and maintain a high-performing advertising ecosystem. Michael has been working in digital advertising since 1997 and was one of the first users of a new ad serving system launching that year called DoubleClick Dart. He has worked with some of the largest media companies in the industry, including MTV Networks, Rodale, Condé Nast, and the advertising agency OMD. Before I hand the call over to Michael, a few housekeeping items. If you would like to ask a question, please type your question into the question box in the GoToMeeting, and we will try our best to respond to each at the end of the presentation. If you would like to ask us a question offline, we have included our email addresses at the end of the presentation. Okay, with that, I'd like to hand the call over to our guest speaker, Michael Geffrin. Michael?
Thanks, Jeff. Welcome, everyone. So today's presentation, we'll be discussing considerations and best practices for selecting and then implementing an integrated CRM and ABM solution. So in order to do so, I think it would be helpful to walk through some of the challenges we were facing at Alloy and what our approach was to solving them, and then why we ultimately decided that an integrated solution made long-term business sense for us, and then we'll wrap up the presentation with a QA session at the end. So to begin, I think one of the things we should do is just take a quick second to define what we mean by CRM and ABM. So I'm sure everyone knows what a CRM is, a customer relationship management system. It's basically any technology that's used to interact with an organization's customers, clients, and Salesforce. It's, the focus of a CRM is on sales opportunity management and customer relation management. It's not necessarily used or a great product for inventory management or pushing campaigns to the ad server or billing for campaigns. It really is mainly to manage the entire sales process. But an ABM, or an ad business management system, is something that's just recently, the past couple of years, has really taken hold of the digital advertising industry. An ABM is a platform that integrates different technologies. So you have ad serving, revenue management, sales recognition, billing, inventory management, analytics, and it takes it into one system and supports the entire life cycle of an advertising campaign. It provides a one world view of business. It's very powerful if you come to think of it, because the digital advertising industry is very fragmented right now. So to have one system to basically help funnel all of those platforms really helps out. So, what were the challenges we were facing at Alloy pre-CRM? Well, so let's take a step back and what we'd like to call internally pain 1.0. And so what were some of those pains before we decided to go with the CRM? Well, a lack of easy access to data. We were not able to take a look at all the opportunities or all the RFPs that were out there easily. It took longer to do business, because everyone had their own different platform to work on off of. We had to reach out to each individual in order to get all the information into one place. So it took a lot longer. There were days where we had to wait for information. The task of chasing information became distracting. Again, because we were chasing down information, our sales team had to take the time to stop and actually write down or put into an Excel spreadsheet the information that needed to be gathered. And so that was taking away their time from actually talking to clients. And because we were not able to see the data easily and in one place, it was really hard to make uniform decisions in terms of where we were moving as a business. Without having that one place for data, place for reports, no one was looking at the same thing at the same time. So because of that, it was a very inconsistent experience for the customer. So let's say a movie company went to one salesperson, they might get different set of information, different set of even specs from one salesperson to another. So without that one place for resources, we weren't able to give a unified vision to the customer. So after taking consideration of all of the issues that we were having with Pain 1.0, the decision we made for our CRM was Salesforce. Now, why did we choose Salesforce? Well, first of all, it is a leader in digital advertising sales management. There are other companies out there that do sales management just as well overall, but we felt that Salesforce had a leg up in terms of digital advertising. It was easy to use. A lot of our sales team was already familiar with Salesforce at previous places or in other jobs in other advertising mediums, so it was very familiar to them. It was very robust when it came to reporting, so we were able to spit out reports that showed data in different ways so we could analyze and then plan accordingly to it. And it was very flexible when it came to customization. We were able to create fields, we were able to create formulas on the fly with Salesforce so that it would be molded to our business needs. So implementation for Salesforce went very smoothly. Our sales team adapted to it very easily, but we soon came to a realization we had additional or newer pains that needed to be solved after the implementation of our CRM, because the CRM was very limited to what it can actually do. So we entered what we called Pain 2.0. And for, like I said, everything that Salesforce was able to do, it couldn't solve all of our problems. So just to give a couple examples of the problems that we saw post-CRM was product and inventory. And everyone knows in the industry how much this is a problem. The CRM was able to help us define our products to our sales team, but managing inventory was very hard. And even with the standardization of products, it was still vague to not only the sales team, but to the rest of our campaign process workflow. So it was hard for us to define exactly what the product was. Then in sales, they were unable to provide rules and create disciplines around the product inventory. So they were able to see what was technically a product, but they were still able to that we were having that CRM couldn't solve. So again, going back to AdOps, implementing campaigns was still a very manual process, even with the CRM implemented. So you were still coming up with mistakes, manual mistakes that the CRM just couldn't solve. And the same went with finance and billing. Because it was not a unified workflow, finance was at times unable to know what exactly to build for the client. So it could be a case where even though the insertion order says for 500,000 impressions for a 2-day period, without the proper paperwork, finance would mistakenly bill, let's say, based on an under-delivery for the 500,000, even though we were billing off of time period. So it was interesting to see that the CRM helped us in some ways, but in the end, we were still having pain points with our workflow. So we tried to customize Salesforce to try to help us with our workflow, our entire workflow, but we found that customization really couldn't meet all of our needs. So we had to move on to think of a solution that was much broader, much more of encompassing our entire business than just the sales order portion of it. So what we needed all along really was a true end-to-end platform. So we needed a system that was to work for everyone. So it was one place that everyone went to work off of. And along those lines, it then made it easier to access information. And along that line as well, less paperwork. I think everyone knows the pain point of working off of Outlook and emails and Excel spreadsheets. So the less paperwork we could have, the better it is for everyone. And so along those lines, by having one system, one platform, there was less chance of discrepancies and errors. So if one set of numbers went in at the beginning, those same set of numbers flowed throughout the entire work process. We were able to then also better analyze data if we were using one system, one integrated workflow system. And so everyone can pull the same data at the same time, and we would all be talking on the same level. Along those lines, again, when talking about workflow is so important when it comes to digital advertising, because we're able to do almost anything and everything with digital advertising. If you need a strong workflow so that nothing falls through the cracks. And then finally, we needed an easy way to integrate with our systems. I think everyone knows, everyone already has systems in place that helps different aspects of digital advertising, be it using LiveRail to serve your pre-roll, using DoubleClick DFP, to be your ad server. But we needed a system that could basically plug and play all of those peripherals into one. So what we decided was we needed to start talking about optimizing the entire workflow cross-functionality. So we needed basically to integrate the CRM and ABM. So in order to do that, we had to take a look and see where we can, within our workflow, to take a look at our resources, to review our redundancies and efficiencies, and the integration of a CRM and ABM seemed to be the perfect solution for doing that. So we needed to first take a look and see what each part of the integrated systems would work on. So the CRM role of an integrated system would be marketing and front-end sales management, account management, and customer support management. But then we needed the ABM to do then the end-to-end workflow and to be the central hub for the technical integration and data, and then the finance and billing end run of a campaign. So it was a case where we had to take an overall view of what parts the CRM could handle and what parts the ABM could. So along those lines, we wanted to make sure we started to basically send out our vendor RFPs, and we asked the exact basic questions that we were discussing on the previous slide. And so we sent it out to all the platforms that are out there. I'm sure everyone is kind of familiar with the different ABMs that are out there. There's Operative One, there's DSM, but we went with Operative One as our solution on it. So after we felt that Operative One was the best way to do end-to-end view of our entire business. So in order to provide our sales team and available inventory in real time, in order to put controls around the products that were available, and in order to be able to easily access all the information, Operative One seemed to be the perfect fit for us. So in addition to that, we found that ABMs also can integrate with ad servers, can integrate with our finance systems. So it really did help out in terms of our workflow. We were able to basically streamline the entire process from RFP to billing. And so because of the implementation of the ABM, we were to then fulfill the campaign needs accurately and in less time. And again, like the last point of the slide, billing became that much easier for finance as well because the workflow was set. Nothing fell out of it. There were, if any changes were made to an order because of the ABM, those changes were updated across the board, and so everyone was informed when a revision was made. So one of the things that we wanted to take a look at was just examples, screenshots of the different systems that Alloy Digital actually uses as an example. So here we have a screenshot of the ABM, which in this case is Operative One. And as you can see the products that are listed in our system, which can then be trafficked into our ad server and then also billed by finance. So just as an example that you can see on your screen, so we were able to, in the ABM, to define our cost method easily, include the actual CPMs, and then to define what type of product it is. Is it a standard product? Is it a custom product? Is it a mobile product? And so by having this menu of products, it's really easy then to basically pluck them out and make your package ready to go for the client. So it made it easier. If you think about the sales workflow process in digital advertising, you basically made it easy for your sales team to pick the products, know how to sell it, know how much they need to sell it for, and know where exactly it's going to be and where it's going to show up. And along those lines, then once they pick from that menu, those products then get pushed over into our ad server and into billing automatically. So this is just an example of how the ABM just helped streamline our workflow process and just made it easier for everyone to use. So now the next slide that we have currently up, it shows then what the CRM was able to do. So this is a screenshot of an opportunity in Salesforce. So the thing that helped us with implementing a CRM was, as you can see, it is easy to look at things. For a salesperson, they're no longer concerned about learning how to input information into, let's say, into a spreadsheet properly, or or have to figure out where to email to have it inputted correctly. The CRM was basically just look and plug in system for our sales team. So right here for the opportunity, they're able to see all this different aspect of this opportunity at a glance without having to go through emails, without having to go through tabs and to go through columns and columns of data. They were able to just see at a glance this opportunity and move on it if they needed to. So that's where the strength of the CRM really helps a business out, is to basically help your sales team make snap decisions and move on it quickly. So we saw what a CRM and we saw the ABM. So now the screenshot we're seeing now is showing how they seamlessly continue the workflow. So previously we saw the opportunity. So let's say that opportunity went final. The got signed off and is now a final IO. And so it seamlessly pushes over into our ABM as a sales order, as you can see here. So all the information fields are already filled out. There's not duplicate resources, a duplicate being put into the system, and potential errors could be made. It is a seamless connection between the two. Just pushes over, cuts down on any errors, and just continues the workflow so that your teams, your resources, don't have to waste time on just re-entering data over and over again. This was a big one for us, revenue schedule integration. Now this allowed us basically, because of the integration between the CRM and the ABM, we were able to see what our revenue was going to look like 6 months from now, 1 year from now. It really allowed us to get the big picture of where our business was going. This is something that I think a lot of businesses kind of miss out in terms of what an ABM and a CRM integration can do, is that easily you can click on a report and it visually shows you at a glance where your business is heading. So this was invaluable to us as a digital advertising based business. So when we look back after the integration on our lessons learned, the big thing that we found with it was that we needed to look at the big picture. Implementing the CRM solved for specific pains that we had with the sales side of our organization. And it helped some in ad-ops and finance, but it really didn't provide all of the transparency, visibility, and scale we needed as a business. It didn't really enable us to look at all of our teams that interacted with the sales process, and it didn't let us look at data in ways that we needed to look at it. So along that line, we really had to look and see the long-term picture of where we were going and what systems we needed in place in order to get there. So the CRM implementation helped out with parts, but it didn't solve everything we needed to do in the long term. So along those lines, you have to remember when you're integrating a CRM with an ABM, you have to have a very strong implementation team in place, because these are very complicated systems that are touching not only your sales process but also your ad serving and your billing. So you really want to make sure that you have a strong team in place to commit the resources you need and to get the support that you can garner from your executive team throughout the project. That's a very important thing to really remember when implementing an ABM, is that you need the support of your executive team to look at the big picture of why it's important to implement an ABM. And finally, for us, the thing that we learned was nonstop training. Training from start to finish on our teams. It is a big change for a lot of personnel on in your company, if you think about it, because everyone is comfortable with Excel spreadsheets. Everyone is comfortable with email. So you're asking them to change that ecosystem and to basically work off of, everyone working off of one system that they might be touching things that they may not necessarily have been familiar with previously. So one of the things that we learned on implementation was that you need to train from the very start. And so along those lines, it was a case where because we were doing training so much for our teams, when our launch date for our integrated ABM and CRM system began, we were able to then jump right on. It wasn't a case where, people were unfamiliar with it and we had problems. it was a case where because we were training our core teams who were using the product, they were ready to go once the launch was happening. So some of the conclusions that we reached for implementation and integration was data continues to grow as a revenue generator. We've seen this across the industry among the different purchases of big companies to data companies, that using and knowing data of your business is invaluable as a revenue generator. So you really need to have a good handle on that data. And along those lines, digital platforms will continue to multiply and diversify. We've seen it just 3 years ago. Who would have known that apps would be as big as they are? 3 years ago we didn't see mobile, or I'm sorry, 5 years ago we didn't see mobile as being as big as in smartphones. So your business has to be flexible enough that they're able to adapt to the changing platforms that are up and coming. So and CRM ABM integration really does help that out because you're able to plug and play with those different platforms. So then we found that workflow process will become more and more important. Along the lines of what we were just talking about with the growing different digital platforms are there. If you do not have a strong workflow process, things are just going to fall through the cracks on it. From personal experience, we've seen that if you do not specify your team's responsibilities along that workflow, you're going to be running into each other and making mistakes. So as an overall view of your business, you should have a strong workflow process in place so everyone knows where they are in the advertising ecosystem. And this next point, personnel. This has been a personal pain point for me as AdOps because there's not necessarily a lot of college courses for digital advertising. You have to basically find the right people that can handle the highly specialized skill sets of data analytics and operations. Really can't stress this enough. It's been a continuing issue across the board for all digital publishers that we need to basically work on not just necessarily grabbing the best people right off the bat, but I think growing them internally, finding the gems and then just having them grow within the company. And then finally, the need for the right infrastructure to support current and future needs. We talked about this a little earlier in point number 2 about digital platforms, but for your digital business, you really need to look beyond where you are or where you're even going to be in a year, because our business, our industry is so dynamic that someone probably in a garage in Silicon Valley is creating the next big thing, and basically if you're not ready to morph and change and to adapt to that new thing, you're going to be left behind. And we've seen many examples of the hot thing that focused on only one subject and basically got left behind. That they weren't able to change and morph with the industry. So you really need to have in place a good infrastructure so that when these new things come about, that you can adapt to them and make some money off of them as well. So thank you very much. That we're opening up now to our questions, and I'm going to pass that over to Jeff.
First, I want to thank Michael. Michael, it's very helpful for you to share LA's specific experiences, and I know people have found this informational. One of the questions that came in was about your experience with Salesforce.com. A couple of points to the question. Isn't Salesforce.com an open platform? Why did it appear to be difficult to customize Salesforce for your needs? And aren't there apps in the App Exchange or other available things that you guys could have used?
Sure. Salesforce was very good for customization. We needed, just to give an example for our customization, we needed specific fields, additional fields for IDs, or specific fields that had partner calculations that wasn't standard as part of Salesforce. The issue that we had with it was because we didn't necessarily take a big picture view, and again, that's why one of the things that I wanted as a lesson learned was a big picture view. When we started then to look at ABMs, we had to take into account all the customizations that we did with Salesforce. And so, again, why we wanted to emphasize taking a big picture view of doing a CRM and ABM integration as part of your workflow was because of the changes that we made. It made it a little bit more difficult for our implementation of the ABM. Now, we were able to do it. It wasn't a problem. But if we took a big picture view of our business, we would have been a much more informed choice for us in terms of doing the customization. Then we would have been more so of, okay, well, the ABM can handle it. Then maybe we didn't have to do the customization of Salesforce. So if you do take a big picture view of your business, then you can take into consideration the customizations you need to do, and maybe something that the ABM will be able to solve without customization of the CRM.
Great, thank you. One of the other questions is for a publisher who is trying to plan this whole process and look at the big picture. Is there a time of year that would be best to take on the implementation process? And how long should people plan for perhaps the CRM process and the ABM process as far as implementation?
Ooh, good question. Yeah. In terms of time of the year, I think that really depends on your business cycle. And in terms for us as a publisher, we always found that Q4 tends to be the busy time. And so you really want to make sure you're devoting the proper resources of your internal teams to the implementation. So, obviously you probably don't want to do it on your busy time. For us at Alloy, we decided Q1 was the best time of year for us because it was after the holiday rush, and so we were able then to carve out time among our internal teams to work on the implementation and to do training so that when our busy season began around Q3, we were ready to go. So again, it depends on what your business cycle is like, but for us as a publisher, we found that Q1 to about Q2 was the best time to do it. In terms of how long it takes, again, that depends on how strong your team is. Again, I'm emphasizing you need a strong internal implementation team to make sure that you're reaching the benchmarks that you set for implementation. So for us, Operative One, I should say, let me just take a more general view. I've done implementations on other ABMs across other big publishers, and it can range as simple as as 3 months to as long as 1 year, depending on the implementation, depending on the customizations that you want for your ABM and CRM. So again, it goes back to making sure that you have mapped out in detail your workflows. What your integrated CRM and ABM are going to do, because once you map that out, then you're able to go into detail what each one will have to shoulder in terms of the workload of your workflow, and that'll determine then how long it's going to take for implementation.
And Michael, the Operative One implementation, how long did that take?
We started, let's see, officially it was March, and we went live last month. So, and that's normal. That's the thing. Again, that one of the final slides that we talked about was talking to your executive team. and making sure they're informed on what's happening with implementation, because I can imagine people outside of us, our digital advertising industry, when they hear things, oh, it's going to take 6 months, it's going to take 4 months, isn't that a long time to implement software? And so if you don't keep everyone in your company involved, from the president, CEO on down, everyone's going to have unrealistic expectations of implementation, because quite honestly, for a lot of people, implementation of software means, well, I'm going to put in download from a server, just start it up, register, and I'm done, and we're good to go. And that's not the way it goes. So that's why one of the things that we emphasized on the presentation is information on the implementation across the board, to make sure everyone understands not only how hard sometimes it can be for implementation, but also how important. This is not a case where you're just loading up a software that's going to shoot out reports. This is managing your business's revenue. So you want to just make sure that comes across.
Great, thanks. And a bit of a follow-up question on that was, did you use Operative to work with you on your CRM implementation and ABM implementation, or did you use other vendor partners for rollout?
For our CRM implementation for Salesforce, we worked with Salesforce directly on implementation. Excuse me. But when it came to our ABM implementation and integration with Salesforce, we worked directly with Operative One. They were basically able to help us do both. So we implemented the CRM Salesforce independently. But when it came time to integrate between the two, Operative One was our expert on that. So they helped us not only implement our ABM, but they helped us integrate our CRM into it as well.
Great, thank you. One of the questions is, do all of your RFP responses go into the ABM, or just one or closed won orders? And who is responsible for entering them into the ABM?
Sure. Yes, all of our RFPs, opportunities all go into the integrated system. It just allows us to get a better view of everything that's out there, and quite honestly, then we're not stepping on each other's toes as well. In terms of implementation, we actually have our sales planners enter that into the system. So we don't actually have the sales people do it directly themselves, because we want them to be free to go out and sell. That's not their business. That's not their strong point. We want them to be, we don't want them to be tied down to their desk or their laptops and entering RFPs, because we know RFPs comes fast and furious. So we actually have a dedicated team that enters all the RFPs into the system. And again, yeah, for us, entering the RFPs were important so that we have everyone can take a look and see and help out in terms of the fulfillment of the RFP. Because just to give a quick example of that, we had a major movie company wanted to do wanted to integrate with one of our TV shows, and if the RFP wasn't in the ABM system, our marketing team wouldn't have seen it. It would have just kind of floated out there and probably would have died. But because it was in the ABM and everyone had access to it, our marketing team was able to take a look at that RFP and say, hey, wait a minute, I think I can help you out with getting that, with the show that we have coming up. So for us, it was important to put it into the integrated system so that everyone can take a look at it. Again, it's the open exchange of ideas and helpfulness that comes with an integrated system like a CRM and ABM. Everyone gets to see the same thing, and everyone can then go in and help out if needed or possible.
Great. Excellent information. I guess maybe as a last question I see here, what about publishers that are maybe mid-CRM implementation and maybe are feeling some of the concerns that you raised here in the Pain 2.0, where they thought maybe CRM could do everything and they're worried it can't? Do you have any recommendations on where they should go from there?
I would definitely say that obviously continue your CRM implementation, but again, take to the points that we've been making in the presentation of continue looking at the big pictures, map out your workflow thoroughly and in detail, because as we've been saying, CRM is great. It can really help you out, but there really are limits to what it can do. So, I mean, my recommendation would be continue with your CRM implementation, but then basically take your workflow and then start putting in where each part of a CRM or an ABM would fit in that workflow. So, okay, you mapped out your workflow and you go, okay, the CRM can definitely do, opportunities and can handle the RFPs and can help with finalizing orders, and then see where your gaps are where it can't fill in. And that's when you go, okay, this is where maybe an ABM can go into place. That's when we need to, put in for pushing over to our ad server. That's when we need the ABM because the CRM just can't do it. So again, recommendation would be map out your workflow, continue your CRM implementation, but then already start planning ahead for an ABM implementation. It might not be immediately, but you want to make sure that you're all set when your business decides that it'll be time. You don't need to go through the pain points that we did with 1.0. You're all set for implementation of an ABM.
Great. Well, with that, I think we've covered the questions that have come in. So I want to thank everyone for joining our webinar, and thank you, Michael, for being our guest speaker. We hope that you found this information presented today informative and enlightening. This presentation has been recorded and will be made available to you tomorrow via email. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact either one of us. We have our email addresses here on the slide. Feel free to send an email. And thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day.